Hey guys, Gio back here with another uncut review. Today I'm talking about the one and only Ghost of Tsushima. This is genuinely such a fun game and I'm going to get into why. Artistically, it's completely different from anything I've ever seen before and it has one of my favourite ever combat systems in a game. Let's dive in and explore why I love this game so much. So I'm starting today a little bit differently and I'm going to dive straight into the visuals or graphics. These are some of the most beautiful graphics I've ever seen in any game, and quite frankly, this is just one of the best pieces of art I've ever looked at. The amount of colour in this world is so insane, with beautiful green valleys, bright red trees, and the stunning golden forest, among many other beautiful locations that I'm sure I'll have flash up on screen as I'm talking. There's absolutely tons of colour going on here, and this makes it stand out when areas are not as colourful. There are over 40 distinct biomes in this game, and every single one is a beautiful picture. Some areas of the land have been visibly scarred by the Mongol invaders, but I'm going to cover more in the story section of this video. The difference between these environments is really awesome because it just highlights how stunning the world is. Something you may notice while watching this footage is that there's always something in motion. Leaves are coming off trees, grass is swaying, and if your character, Jin, is wearing a cape, it's always blowing in the wind. The amount of movement in this game is not only just picturesque, but it also makes the world feel more real in my opinion. Our world is constantly in motion, and so seeing everything in motion in this world just makes it feel more real. So that's the graphical stuff covered there, but there is a reason why I put visuals first. Many visual elements actually transition into gameplay, and I want to talk about those separately because this is so fascinating to me and I felt they deserve their own section. So I'm going to call these elements visual gameplay. They're slight little actions that the player takes that actually have a visual impact, or vice versa. In fact, you just saw one. You can play the flute in this game by swiping left on the touchpad, and there's a couple different songs Jin will play. But what is really awesome is that this will change the weather. If it's raining or if it's a grey skyline, you just play your flute and the day changes and becomes sunnier and more beautiful. I thought this was genius. A nice example of visuals impacting the gameplay are little birds and other animals you see in the world. I'll cover this more in depth later as this is a key gameplay element, but essentially different animals in the world will bring you to different important locations, as well as other things such as smoke on the skyline will lead you to other areas. Little things like the weather changing depending on how you play is cool too. If you leave an enemy to suffer after a fight or you use stealth, the weather becomes darker. If you fight with honor, the weather stays light. I thought this was so cool and it really played into the key elements here of being a samurai and Jin trying to break away from that, but I'll talk more about that in the story bit. It's these little details that make the game stand out even more and just make it really visually appealing, and I just love that the visuals are linked into the gameplay in these subtle ways. While we're on the subject, I thought I'd just bring up the performance of the game. I originally played the game on a PS4 on my first playthrough and it looked amazing and it ran pretty smooth, but obviously at 30 frames per second. My second and most recent playthrough on the New Game Plus was actually on the PS5. Despite there not being an official PS5 version of the game yet, the resolution is boosted to 4K and the game runs at 60 FPS. These settings are also available on the PS4 Pro as far as I'm aware, but regardless, you're going to have a great experience wherever you play this. Okay, I'm going to talk about the story a little bit now, so let me break it down. You play as Jin, a samurai, and the Mongols are invading your home, the island of Tsushima. In the first battle against them, your forces are decimated and nearly all of the samurai die. You and your uncle, Lord Shimura, are the only survivors. You are rescued from Komoda Beach, which is where this battle happens, by a woman called Yuna. She is a key character as she is the first person who introduces you to stealth combat. You can then go and storm the castle that Khotun Khan, this game's primary antagonist, has taken over. He easily defeats you, and this is where the game really opens up. It's a pretty simple setup and it's essentially a revenge story, but I think it actually elevates itself above that. At launch, a lot of people didn't have much to say about the story, but I really enjoyed the main campaign, and if you play through the key side quests alongside it, the story hits so much harder. The story is so much more than a revenge story too, in my opinion. It's more about Jin Sakai discovering who he really is away from the samurai code. I won't spoil anything here, but the whole game is filled with great moments, especially when it comes to story beats involving the stealth gameplay, and the final boss at the end of the story is amazing. Again, without spoiling it, there are two choices at the end of the game. At the end of this video, I'll tell you what I chose and why, and which one I believe to be the true ending. So stick with me to find out what it is. So earlier I mentioned the side quests. There are lots of different types, which I'll discuss more in the gameplay bit, but I just want you to know that there are side quests here that specifically relate to the side characters you meet in the game. Yuna has her own arc, as well as Lady Masako, and a bunch of other characters. Do not leave these until the end of the game. Playing these as you play through the main story makes you feel like you've been to hell and back with these people, and it makes the story so much better. I love these side quests, and I'm sure you will too. So now, I'm going to try and break down all of the gameplay elements and all of the content in this game. Let's start with combat, because I'm sure this is the bit that you're most interested in. So the combat in this game is absolutely second to none. It's challenging at first, but as you improve and you get better, it feels amazing. So you have your standard sword, your katana, and you use square for light attacks and triangle for heavy. You can dodge out the way, and you have bows for ranged attacks. You parry with L1, and you're going to need to get good at parrying. This is just the base combat, and it's already great. But as you get deeper, it gets better. There are different stances in this game. One for fighting against swords, one for shield enemies, one for spear enemies, and another one for brutes. These stances are learnt by killing enemy leaders. You can also observe leaders and learn that way, and then kill them after, so you learn stances much quicker. Stances are really important because trying to take out a spear enemy using a sword stance is a massive pain, because the attack style is completely different and it's harder to block. So this adds great variety and makes combat always feel fun, as you're always switching between stances on the fly to fight specific enemies. Ranged weapons are also great. You have a normal bow, which is quick and good at close to medium range, and a long bow, which is basically a sniper. You're going to use this a lot to take out heavily armored enemies, but this bow is much slower and so can only really be used standing still. Each bow has a variety of different arrows too, like fire arrows or explosive arrows, but to be honest, the standard arrows are pretty great by themselves. Jin also gains access to many side weapons that you can use during combat. Think of them as Batman's gadgets from the Arkham games. One of the most useful are the kunai, I think I'm saying that right, or throwing stars, which will break an enemy's defense and can sometimes just straight up kill them. There are other side weapons which I'll be using in the video, so I won't go through them all, but they're all fun to use. On lower difficulties, you won't need to engage with these mechanics as much, but on the harder difficulties, they can really save your neck. Everything I just mentioned is upgradable, and all the upgrades are satisfying. There are charms that you can equip which will boost certain stats, and these vary from great stuff to stuff you'll probably never use. But none of them feel useless. They all just suit different playstyles, and this was really cool to see. The way you get these charms is awesome, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. One of the most unique fighting mechanics here is what the developers call a standoff. These are awesome when you pull them off. You walk into an enemy camp and activate a standoff. The enemies surround you, you hold down the triangle button and wait for them to go for you. They'll try to trick you, so be careful, because if you let go too early, you're basically going to die. But if you pull it off and release at just the right moment, you'll slice up whoever just charged you. As you increase this skill, you can take out more and more enemies, and depending on what armor you're wearing, you can kill up to like 5 people without even engaging in proper combat. This is awesome, and I love pulling it off. So everything I just mentioned sounds really great, right? And that is only half of the combat. The other half is the stealth. And you know what? So many people have said that the stealth in this game is boring or not enjoyable or derivative. But I disagree. I definitely prefer all-out combat way more, but the stealth is fun, and I'm going to tell you exactly why. So it's pretty basic if I'm honest. Jin can climb things to stay out of sight or hide in tall grass, because every single game has handy tall grass that the protagonist can hide in. When he's hidden, he can leap down on enemies and kill a single one, or perform multiple kills in one go when you unlock that skill. Again, think of the fear takedowns in Arkham Knight. He has access to some tools like wind chimes that will draw enemies to certain areas so you can go in and kill them. Kill animations are brutal and feel almost savage, and I love that about this game. It isn't clean, it's messy and nasty, and is shown to be against the samurai way. That's about all there is to stealth, if I'm completely honest, and it's simple but really satisfying. The reason I say it's so fun is because the game is not meant to be played as a stealth game. Sure, there are bits where you do have to be stealthy in main missions, and I'm not a fan of forced stealth, but these bits aren't too bad. And certain open world activities benefit from you being stealthy. You don't have to be stealthy, but you're going to find it way more difficult if you're not. But honestly, the real purpose of the stealth here is just for you to thin out larger enemy encampments, so you can then transition into all-out combat and fight head-on with a smaller number of enemies. Of course, you don't have to do this. Sometimes I just go to a large enemy camp and just all-out fight them from the get-go because I love doing it that way. But the stealthy option is great also. It also nicely weaves into the narrative, as like I say, Jin is not supposed to be this ghostly figure who strikes from the shadows. He's meant to be a samurai who fights head-on and with honor. And so I feel like the stealth is actually more simplistic on purpose. It's meant to feel like you're discouraged from playing in this way, and that's why the stealth here is really really genius in my opinion. There's one last ability that I haven't mentioned that is so awesome and fits into both playstyles really well and really seamlessly. This is the Ghost stance. I won't spoil how you get it, but eventually you unlock the Ghost stance and you activate this by killing enemies until a meter fills up, or stealth killing an enemy general. This is an ability that you don't have until this point, and so now you can just cut off a general's head, and it's really, really awesome. Once you've done this, you activate this stance and the world turns black and white. Enemies cower in fear and they don't know what to do, and you just walk straight up to them and cinematically slash them into bits. You can kill about 3 enemies and then the game returns to normal. This is so awesome, and I love that they included this. It felt really powerful and worthwhile and really went hand in hand with the narrative of Jin becoming a ghost. And I love how they didn't lock it to one specific playstyle. If you play stealthy, you can honestly go around a camp, kill however many people you need to kill to fill up this meter, activate the Ghost stance and take out the last 3 guys in this way. Or if you play a combat playstyle, which is how I do it, you just need to take out, again, maybe 8 guys. Make sure you don't get hit though. Getting hit resets the ability, which can be a pain in the ass when you've spent so long perfectly doing combat. But when you pull it off, it's just so satisfying, and this ability is really great. I'm gonna quickly run through the different types of enemies because I actually feel like they did a really good job here. So depending on which region of the map you're in, the enemies can vary in difficulty, but they're always the same archetype, which is interesting, and I'll explain more about that. So the easiest enemies are at the bottom of the map, mid-level enemies are in the middle, and you guessed it, the tougher enemies are at the very top of the map. This felt cool because the enemies getting stronger actually felt like natural progression. You move through the world, and of course the enemies get stronger and stronger as you do. And if you play well enough, you can still take them out no problem. There are no damage numbers or arbitrary level ups here. The world is just open to you and you can go and fight whoever you want. And it always feels pretty even when you're outnumbered, as long as you are good enough. As for enemy types, you have archers, which you're going to always want to take out first because they are such pains. Guys with swords, guys with spears, guys with a sword and shield combo, big guys with shields and swords, big guys with massive guns. Yes, a gun. It's kind of insane, but they explain it away with something. A guy that wields a tiny knife but will throw explosives at you, and then the leaders, which always swap between having a sword and shield combo, or a spear. There is also another enemy type, the Ronin, and these guys fight completely differently to anyone else in the game. All the boss encounters feel satisfying to play through and can be pretty tense. I just want to highlight, the boss encounters are nothing crazy, nothing special. They're just sword fights so enemies have bigger health pools, but they always feel really good and never feel too grindy. So it really doesn't sound like there's loads of enemies, but you have to consider that for each different weapon they might hold, you have to switch your stance, which changes the flow of combat completely. You then also have to consider that further into the game you get, these guys become more and more armored up. So originally, you may have shot a brute in the head with an arrow and he'd die. Now you're further into the game, he's wearing a helmet and heavier armor. You could try shooting him with an explosive arrow or stealthily take him out. Maybe you'll just engage in all-out combat with him and take him out that way. You might throw one of your explosives at him or use your blowgun to find an exposed part of him and poison him, turning him against all his friends. There are so many different ways to approach a single combat scenario, and that's what's amazing. They all feel satisfying, and that's why, even though the enemies boil down to different weapons, they're always satisfying because you can always find a different way of taking them out. The other enemy types act in this way too, but I really just wanted to highlight the Ronin enemy right now. These guys don't change, but they provide a really real challenge because they don't fight like any of the other enemy types. They fight more like you, the player, much slower and more defensive, and they can even use some powerful attacks that you yourself can unlock. I thought this was brilliant because not only do they change up how you're approaching combat, again, it's a little link into the world. They fight more like you because you guys are from the same place, Tsushima Island, and so of course they're nearly as capable as you. That's why it's so damn satisfying when you do take out a Ronin. What I will say is it's really fun fighting Mongols and Ronin at the same time because you can be very aggressive towards the Mongols, take them out, and then the Ronin will come out of nowhere and try and slash you, and they do some pretty hard unblockable attacks. So sometimes you're just gonna have to dodge and hope you get out of the way, and it's so fun. I just want to take a minute here to talk about traversal and exploration in this game. It's a pretty large map, but you're honestly never going to feel the urge to fast travel, unlike certain big games at the moment like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, where the world is just ridiculously big. This world here is big, but it's a good size. And the movement speed, underrated thing in games, is really good. Like, some games have such slow movement speed and it makes the world feel much bigger than it really is. And that can either be tastefully done like in Red Dead Redemption 2 or badly done like in Assassin's Creed Valhalla. But I digress. Let's get back to Ghost of Tsushima. Like I said, you're never going to feel the urge to fast travel. A big part of the game is you getting on your horse and riding to each destination. And this feels so good. The horse is quick and it works a lot like Jin. You just press L3 to sprint and it will just sprint continuously. Everywhere you go in this world is stunning and you're really going to want to experience it all and drink it in. Like I say, fast travel in this game is actually really good. You fast travel fast, but you don't really want to do it because the world is so beautiful. One of my favorite features of the exploration is the guiding wind. I hate minimaps. If you watch my Spider-Man videos, you can probably tell that I've got the minimap turned off a lot of the time because I just really don't like them. And this game has no minimap. It has no compass. It takes you out of the game, in my opinion, having a little minimap in the corner of the screen. A compass I can live with, but minimaps are just really, really ugly. But Sucker Punch found a way to get rid of both of those elements and implement a pretty unique mechanic, in my opinion, which is the guiding wind. You swipe up on the touchpad and a gust of wind will blow in the direction you want to go. So you have to set a waypoint to do this, but that's fine because you're going to be setting different waypoints, or you might just have an objective and the guiding wind will automatically know that that's where you want to go. So when the wind activates, this affects everything around you. The leaves blow in that direction, the grass sways that way, and then it dies down. It's really cool that you just follow the wind to your objective. And I also loved how the wind always offers you a straight path directly to your objective. If you look at it on the map, you'll always think, damn, that's really strange, just a straight line, because so many other games, you know, think of GTA 5, they give you big zigzags and stuff like that along the road. But here, it makes sense that there is none of that because it's the wind. Of course, it doesn't follow a road or anything like that. Sometimes you'll be following the wind and you come across a path that your horse can't cross. Your horse can't swim in this game, so if you come to a river, you need to find a way around. Or there may be a mountain in your way, and it's up to you to find your way around this obstacle. I thought this was great, and again, just made the exploration feel so much more natural and realistic. Because on the way to an objective, I may have to stop and think about where I'm going. And then I spot a little fox in the distance, so I follow that fox and find a shrine. It's little moments like this in Ghost of Tsushima that give the open world that lived-in feeling and makes you want to keep going. And just makes you explore more. Like I say, many times playing this game, I was on the way to a main story objective, and I'd reach a bit that I couldn't cross because the wind just blew straight over it and I had to find a bridge. And by doing that, I came across a bandit camp or a new parkour puzzle that I hadn't seen before and I had to climb up a mountain. Then I got a really cool charm that affected my gameplay and made the game better for me because I could now do new really awesome things. The guiding wind is an underrated feature, and I hope more games start bringing in diegetic things like this where not necessarily the wind takes you, but we have some different form of compass. Another little shout out to a different game I love in Watch Dogs, the system they have. So they have a mini map, which I hate, but they also just have arrows pop up on the street showing you where to go. Things like that are great, and I think Ghost of Tsushima just takes that one step further. I also need to talk about how amazing the photo mode is in this game. It's just a quick mention, but it's just so in-depth. I absolutely love it. The fact that you can change the time of day is such an underrated feature, always getting you the best shots possible. I managed to get some cool shots in this game, and honestly, it's just fun and easy to use. I'm going to have some pictures flash up on the screen as I'm talking about this because this game is so beautiful and so cinematic and so taking with these awesome cinematic shots. Feels like it fits right in, and it's easily mapped to like the left D-pad button, so they know they know you're going to be messing around with photo modes. And I'm not somebody who generally does, but in this game I was stopping like every half an hour to take a picture of something because this game is different. Let's talk about the open world and the content you can find in it. So as I mentioned previously, there are side quests relating to side characters you meet as you play, and these are awesome and add depth to the characters. Then there are just standard side quests, filler I'd call them, that you can find randomly throughout the world. These are still enjoyable and are their own mini little stories, but are nothing insane. They're just standard side quest content, and that's fine. Then there's the mythic quests. These are awesome. There's only a handful, but they all focus around different mythic legends on the island of Tsushima and are connected to different samurai. These stories are, like I say, awesome. And quests actually make you think sometimes, often having you track down specific locations or a specific object in the environment. And there's always a cool reward at the end, like a new set of powerful armor or little things like that. There are plenty of other things to find out in the world other than side quests and stunning scenery. Loads of little collectibles that help build up the world and give information about the Mongols. These are cool, but you won't be bothering with them too much because they're only small little collectible things and they're pretty easy to miss if I'm completely honest. You don't need to collect all of them to platinum the game or anything. In fact, this is a pretty easy platinum if you're into trophy collecting and stuff like that. A lot of the time, you're going to be following animals in the environment. This is what I was talking about earlier, where different things in the world will lead you to things that are actually useful. The open world is big, but everything in here has a purpose and meaning and doesn't feel too far away. Plumes of white smoke will take you to baths that let you relax and reflect on things that happen in Jin's life, whilst also giving you a health boost. Following different coloured birds can lead you to shrines, to gain those charms I was talking about earlier that give you additional buffs. These also double up as little climbing challenges, where you can use your grappling hook to access hard to reach areas. I'm not going to lie, I didn't love the feeling of climbing. The mechanic feels a little bit janky to me, but climbing up cliffs is exhilarating nonetheless, and reaching the top and being awarded with a brand new charm and an amazing vista always felt worth it. But again, that climbing mechanic is not it, and I'm surprised because these guys did Infamous Second Son, and I quite enjoyed that game, and the climbing mechanic in there was fine, but here it just felt a little off. Foxes also do similar things as the birds, and they'll take you to smaller shrines, which reward you with lesser charms, but you can pet the foxes, so that's a reward in itself. This stuff can all be found in the open world, and they're all great fun and give meaningful benefits to your character. Also, side note, if you're playing in New Game Plus, instead of receiving these charms, you will get flowers, which can be spent at a specific merchant. You'll notice me getting flowers as you're watching the gameplay from completing these little quests and things. That's just because I'm in New Game Plus mode, so don't let that confuse you too much. There is all this going on, and I haven't even touched upon the customizability yet. There are tons of outfits you can buy and upgrade, each with their own specific buffs. What's great about this is that there is no plus 15% damage or minus certain percent critical hit. Instead, they're all good buffs, and it's up to you what you value more. Like early on, I found a outfit that helped me uncover more of the map, but then later on I found one that gave me increased health, and so I ended up going with that one instead. These little buffs are all useful, and it's up to you how you play. My personal favorite outfits are the fully upgraded Sakai clan armor and the fully upgraded ghost armor. And what's awesome is you can dye all of these armors. You can find an armor you love, but maybe it's blue and you're not a massive fan of blue. You can go and buy a black dye, and that changes the color of the armor to black, obviously. I love this feature because it really lets you customize your Jin. I often switch between the black and white armor dyes because I just think they're both really cool, and sometimes I have a red color scheme going on too. You can also mix and match what you're wearing. If you want to wear a traditional samurai armor whilst wielding a katana that looks like a giant tail, wearing a baboon mask and a Ronin hat, you can absolutely do that. So as you can see, there is plenty in the world. There are things I haven't even mentioned, like the collectible katanas that you can find, things like that, but that's just because I think you should just go and find them for yourself. The game has loads of fun, creative things in it, and it's well worth a playthrough. So here we are once again, right at the end of the video. I'm pretty sure you can all tell I love this game. It's actually my personal game of the year for 2020, and I love the world and combat system. I think the story is really good, not quite great, but the final boss battle and conclusion really elevates it for me. I've heard people say it's just another open world game, or that it's basically just Assassin's Creed Japan. This is so reductive and could not be further from the truth. Assassin's Creed wishes it had this game's combat system, and the open world is not filled with pointless tat. It's all meaningful and really adds to your experience. This game is incredible, and I definitely recommend going out to buy this fantastic game. Right, I'm about to spoil the ending of the game, so if you don't want it spoiled, please stop listening now. I mentioned earlier that there's two endings, and I told you I'd tell you what I chose, so we're going to do that right now. So at the end of the game, you fight your uncle. You win the duel and have to choose whether to kill him or spare him. Your uncle wants you to kill him, as that is the honorable samurai way. So on my first playthrough, I did choose the ending where Lord Shimura dies. But I felt really bad about it afterwards, and I couldn't understand why I felt so bad, because it's what he wanted. And I justified it in that way. I said, well, it's what Shimura wanted, I did the right thing. But I felt so bad about it, and I enjoyed the game so much that I did a second playthrough, and I replayed the entire game in New Game Plus, and I chose the ending where I spared his life. And I think this fitted so much better with the narrative of Jin becoming his own person away from Samurai Code. I loved this ending, and I personally believe this is the true ending, as we know that Jin loves his uncle and would never want to kill him, making this make a lot more sense to me. The beauty of art is, though, that maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe that isn't the true ending, or maybe neither of them are. Maybe there is no right answer, and that's also a beautiful ending in itself. Thank you all very much for watching, guys, especially if you sat through all the way to the end. I really appreciate it, and please make sure to like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you haven't already. We really appreciate it. If you share this video, that would be absolutely fantastic. The sooner we get to 100, the sooner we're going to do a little giveaway. So thank you all for sticking with me, and I'll see you all next time.